Hello again. You may remember in one of the earlier sessions I mentioned that we will be doing things in small bites because that's the method, should I say, that is most easily accepted by our body. We don't like to have to memorize 5 pages of a book, but a sentence or two works just fine. What we're going to do now is go back to the knife hand strike, the chop that we talked about, and we talked about it during the lesson in what we would call macro terms. What was the arm motion of it? Where did it start? Where did it finish? General things like that, because you've got to get the big flow of it first. Now I wanted to take time and focus in on this standalone session of what to do with the hand, and there's a very good reason for it. Training aid. Contrary to rumors, I do not fly around on this on Halloween. However, if you'll notice on this broom, it's really soft and flexible up here at the end. But when you get down here where it's stitched together tightly, it's hard. Now this is really just a small, lightweight broom, but even in this condition, if we laid a 1-inch pine board out and we struck it with this, it would break it just as if we were hitting it with a knife hand strike. However, if we hit it down here, it might knock the dust off of it, which is what it's made for, but it's not going to break it. So why did I talk about a broom? If you've ever looked at an anatomy book, you know that the bones all throughout your hand are small. And they have to be protected in a way that when you hit something with it, you don't break yourself. The way you do that is positioning and tensing. Now the striking surface of the knife hand, the chop, is right through here. We don't want to hit up on the wrist. That's a joint. You don't want to be fracturing joints. Take forever to heal. We don't want to really hit down here on the little finger side because guess what? That's a joint too. We want to try to make contact right into here. Now, realizing there's going to be some overlap. This is going to feel some of it and this is going to feel some of it, but we want most of it to be right into here. And in that context, I'm talking about if you're hitting a 12-inch board, 12 by 12. If we're hitting a smaller target, the targets that we discussed for the knife hand strike, it's not a problem to keep it isolated to this part of your hand. So now how do we tense up our hand so that the bones are held into place like the straw on the broom was held into place? Well, first off, we want to try to keep our fingers together. Now that, strictly speaking, isn't part of the tensing, but what we don't want to do is hit something and have like a multiple pool ball effect, bang, bang, bang. You're banging these knuckles against each other, and just as if you take a bunch of glasses and pack them in a box without any padding around them and lay them loosely in there, you throw the box up in the back of the moving truck and you'll have no glasses when you get to where you're going. The best way, of course, is to individually wrap each one. The next best way, if you can't wrap them, is to put them next to each other to start off with and wedge them tight in the box. Then as long as you don't just drop the whole box, they won't have a chance to gain momentum against each other, and thus when something bumps them from the outside, they'll just kind of shift. They won't shatter. That's what we want to. That's the way we want to protect our knuckles. Okay. I don't want to say you can't, but I will say it's very difficult to keep them perfectly squeezed together, but we want to keep them as close as possible. Okay? We just don't want them flared out into here. We want to have a little bit of bend in the fingers. Okay? You can maybe see that. Okay? And the reason we want that is when the finger is fully extended, any direction that it's torqued, and let's just take one finger, if it's moved to the side, it's going to break a lot easier than if it's here, because when it's down here, the joint will rotate just a little bit. If you've got it locked at full extension, think about what happens if you lock your leg at full extension or your arm at full extension when you're punching. It takes very little to break it. The fact of the matter is, many of the jiu-jitsu systems rely on having a joint straight for you to put pressure against. Now, they also have where you put them in certain angles depending on what you want to do. But one of the techniques is a straight joint. It causes, you can make it be the bearer of a lot of pain for somebody. So we want to have a little bit of bend to them so that when they do have an accidental brushing against something, you're not going to put extra stress on the ligaments that are holding bone to bone. The thumb, we don't want it waving around in the breeze. And the reason we don't is this. When we have tensed the fingers just a little bit, like a dynamic tension, so that you're fighting squeezing this way against straightening them out. If you haven't ever done anything with dynamic tension, we could spend a long time discussing it here. But if it's totally foreign to you, Google it up, and you'll see that it's like picking up weights and holding them right here. Now, we don't advocate training with dynamic tension, because if you hold your weights right here, you will gain strength in this position, but it's limited to a 15-degree range of motion. That would be 7.5 that way. And so you're going to get stronger in this range right here. That's not going to help you much in day-to-day life, okay? But this kind of dynamic tension is not being done for an exercise. It's being done so that we can keep the bones more properly aligned through the muscle tension. The muscles in the arms that run down and then connect to the connective tissue through the hand. If we're holding the muscles in both hemispheres, let's call it, the muscles that want to squeeze this way and the muscles that want to straighten out, if both of them are tensed, these fingers will be much more secure, just like the broom. The thumb also, if it's flopping around down here, the muscles in this part of your hand are being left out of the equation. We want it pulled back this way, okay, bent, and curved down, flexed down just a little bit. It is similar to if you had a pistol in your hand and you reach up to cock the hammer on the pistol. If some of y'all are shooters, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's that flexing back motion. If you're not a shooter, I'm sorry, it'll mean nothing to you, and there's really nothing I can do without putting a pistol in your hand to help you learn it. But think of it this way. Keep it pulled over that way and pulled back. When you've got the thumb in this position and the fingers curled, you've done all that you can do to tense the muscles in the forearm that tense the connective tissue through the hands and fingers, so that when you hit something with it, you have a nice tight broom and you're making contact with it. Now, in my opinion, we want to strike with a flat wrist, just like we punched with a flat wrist. Remember that one, right? Okay, and that it's every bit as important. Can you punch, can you strike like this? Yes, you can. But I really don't recommend it for the same reason that I described to you, that some of the jiu-jitsu schools will they'll leave you in a bent wrist position or a bent elbow position because they can put more pressure against your joints. If you put yourself in a bent joint position and then exert pressure by striking out here, that's a lot of leverage going against that joint. For our brothers in Shotokan and Shido-ryu and probably Goju-ryu, I realize that there are some strikes in some of the katas that you deliver this way and you're hitting high, okay? I'm not going to criticize the kata because I practice Konkudai too, because overall it's a real good form, and if nothing out of respect to Master Funakoshi. But when you turn your wrist like that, you have put a weak link in the chain. If you can avoid it, never hit this way, always strike this way. If you're hitting low and you can keep the wrist straight, if someone has lunged at you, you've gotten back out of the way, and you can hit across here and keep hitting inward is not the problem, as opposed to outward. Hitting at an angle where you have to bend the wrist can be the problem. Another disclaimer, that was not to get into an argument with anybody about, well, Master Funakoshi did this. Keep in mind, we're dealing with a fighting science. Master Funakoshi, by the time he incorporated those movements into Konkudai, was dealing with an art form. And let's just leave it at that. Okay, at any rate, I hope you all found this effective and informative. Please pay close attention to it, and now incorporate what we've just talked about tensing the fingers, the thumb, keeping the hand straight, in the knife hand, the chop practice that you learned on the previous training session. Have good training.